Hello. Hi. Hey, you. Hi, beautiful. I'm Candice, or Sister Minh with Happy Catastrophe. I'm covering this up because it's a little glary. I don't want to hurt your precious eyes. I know a lot of you have seen this book, and there's several really good flip-throughs online. However, I found that when I turned through this new mythographic by a new artist, Weronika Kolinska, is that I felt a sense of peace and calm. When I looked through this, it was just sort of a settling down. I've also noticed that many of you, maybe you, my dear, are extremely unsettled right now. There's a lot of fear happening in the world, a lot of sad things happening to many of us. And for some of us, our mental health is just a bit fragile right now, and I can definitely relate with that. So I have quite a few other videos that are on the plate to be released. I do not currently have internet service because of a storm that came through here, so I can only do short videos that I can upload at work. But I really felt compelled to do a slow, peaceful, serene flip through of a book that I found very calming and mentally soothing. And maybe I'll even tell a story. So if you are feeling unsettled and mentally fragile right now with anxiety or depression or whatever your mind is struggling with right now, know that you are safe, that we are here together, and that I see you, I understand you, and you can always reach out to me. And that we'll get through this together. There's always a coloring book for you to color, and it's always a good time to color. Don't forget that. And that you can walk the entire world over and find nobody more worth your love than yourself. That's a Buddhist saying. So this is a new mythographic put out by a new artist to us, Weronika Kolinska, and I am very excited about it. There are mixed reviews about this. Some people aren't crazy about the crystals, but if you've ever colored Fabiana Attanasio, you've seen a few crystals in your day. That woman loves crystals. So let's look at this. I've got you nice and zoomed in, so we can just peacefully turn the page. Isn't that beautiful? I find this book, yes, there's lots of crystals in it, but it's less about the crystals in the page than it is about the crystal kingdom. This is an entire kingdom, so this opening page invites us in. Let's see what we have in store for us. I have this one marked. There's so many in here I want to do, but I was thinking this kind of felt like an underwater scene first, so I had this one marked. He has slugs on the end of his tentacles. Is that not interesting? What an interesting creature to color. Tonight I had a dear friend reach out to me who had had some words with an employer. And the employer said some things that they probably don't even remember they said now, but it has bothered my friend for over a week. Here's another one I was thinking about doing. I was thinking about it because I have no idea how to do those types of sun rays, and I'd like to try it. And look at our dear fairy friend catching dewdrops. Imagine yourself there. What a wonderfully peaceful place to be. Nothing but sun rays and dewdrops. And a bee and a crystal. And my friend was really upset. She was considering quitting, changing careers, because this man had said some things that bothered her, and she couldn't let it go. So I have a story for her, and for you. If you too are dwelling on something that's bothering you, something you can't let go. Once a long time ago, there was an old monk and a young monk, and they were traveling through the forest, over the hills, following a well-worn footpath. From their monastery in the woods to a monastery down in the valley floor. It would take them hours to complete this journey, but they knew it well, and they were completing it in contemplative silence. As the two walked along, they came across a river. They could hear it from afar. It was a pretty rapidly rushing river. But they knew it wasn't a deep one, at least not too deep for them, for they were tall and lean from months and years of hiking in the forest. So they came up to the side of this river, ready to cross. And what do they see there but a woman? Sort of a young woman, probably in her 20s. She was sitting by the side of the river and she was crying. And the older monk said, "What is ailing you? What is wrong? Is there anything I can do?" And the woman said, "I need to cross this river. I'm heading to see relatives. But the waters are high this time of year and I cannot cross." Well, the young monk was about to wish her well and continue across the river, because no way and no how can a male monk touch a woman. But before he could say anything, the older monk said, "Here, I will carry you across. I am tall, the river is not too high for me, and I will get you across safe and sound." So to the younger monk's horror, the older monk bent over, scooped up the young lady, held her close in his arms like a baby, and began to wade across the river. The young monk was so dumbfounded, he could not even speak. And he went across the river in stunned silence, splashing along behind the older monk, who was carrying a heavy burden. The older monk waited very carefully, careful not to spill his precious cargo. And when he got to the other shore, he stepped up onto the bank and he gently set the woman down on her feet. The woman could not thank him enough. She bowed and thanked him and offered him anything that she could possibly offer him to pay for his passage across the river, but he said, no, of course not. He bowed back to her, and he and the young monk parted ways with the woman and kept walking down the path. Well, the young monk's stunned silence grew into an angry silence because male monks do not touch women. That is forbidden. That is an ejection out of the monastery, and your robes will be taken from you. For it defiles a man. It makes a man less pure to touch a woman. And it's just not allowed. So they walk in silence for mile after mile. And as they get to the last bit of the walk, and they're cresting a hill, and they can see down into the valley their destination, the older monk, who's been very aware that there's something bothering this young monk, stops and turns back to him and looks at him and says, "Well?" The young monk is shocked again and nearly stumbles into him, but he stops as well and looks at the older monk in the eyes and says, "Well, what?" And the older monk says, "Something is obviously bothering you. It has been since we left the river. What is bothering you?" And the young monk's pent-up frustrations and fear and anger at this older man and his actions just burst out into a string of words, and he almost yelled, "How could you? How could you possibly carry that woman across the river? You know what this means for a monk to carry a woman or touch a woman of any sort in any place. How could you possibly carry her across the river? And the old monk smiled at his young friend and said, "My son, I put that woman down miles ago. Why are you still carrying her?" Isn't this a great picture? Look at those snails. I love snails. So that's the story I had for you today. It's something I think it's good to remember. This older monk, yes, he broke a vow. But he broke a vow intentionally, and he broke a vow for a reason that he felt in his heart and with his decision-making skills was the right reason. He made a choice that he could live with. Now, the younger monk was the one with the problem. However, the younger monk never touched the woman. He wasn't the one who made a decision to break his vows. He is still solidly following his promises, keeping his promises, and keeping his vows. So, why is he so upset? This literally had nothing to do with him and affects him in no way. I think that's what the monk meant, the older monk meant, when he said, "Why are you still carrying her?" At this point, hours had passed. The old monk had made his decision, was going to live with the consequences, and was fine with it. And the younger monk spent 2 hours, 3 hours, however long it took them to finish their walk and to complete their journey in anger and bitterness, in shock and frustration, and a lot of emotions that are really uncomfortable. While the older monk suffered not at all. He happily continued his walk. Was grateful he was there to help the woman across the river, and was pretty much at peace with his choices. So the younger monk, being angry at the older monk's decision, did nothing but make himself uncomfortable for hours. Sometimes I've heard that say it's like drinking poison expecting the other man to die. You know, when you're angry at someone. I drive 3 hours a day commuting back and forth to work, and someone cuts me off or tailgates me or flips me off. And if I choose to get angry about that, which often it doesn't feel like a choice, I just get angry. That's perfectly understandable. Your emotions are valid. You can be angry. You can be shocked at someone's decision. But to keep being angry, to drive the rest of the many, many miles to my house, angry that someone just cut me off and flipped me off, and how dare he, and thinking of all the things I would say if I ran into him again, and how I wish I had one of those reader boards that I could type out a message and he could see it as I was driving down the road. How many times have I wished I could do that? Look at that, it's a spider in a hermit shell. It's interesting. Just stewing in my own frustration for hours and hours is like drinking the poison, expecting it to affect that guy who was so rude or whatever. Who knows? Maybe even that person that cut me off had no idea they cut me off. Maybe it was all done by accident. For sure, they've probably forgotten about me. And yet here I am hours later, angry about it. So when we hang on to emotions like that, to anger, to sorrow, it's not asking you to try letting them go. It's not saying they're not valid. Your feelings and your emotions are valid. Anything you feel is valid. All I am suggesting is that if you are still feeling that days later, hours later, weeks later, it's only hurting yourself now. It's not helping the initial situation that caused those feelings. Now it has nothing to do with the other person. The other person has moved on. Now it's just you. replaying it, reliving it, creating those emotions again. You're drinking poison. Now, my friend was ready to quit her job. My suggestion to her was to breathe. Just breathe. Breathe and do whatever makes yourself feel good. For me, it's coloring. Honestly, coloring makes me feel so much better. And if not better, at least it makes me feel, maybe it makes me forget that I'm angry for a bit, or forget that I'm in sorrow, or forget I get wrapped up in something else. That's because emotions are transient. Emotions are not something that stick around. We're not angry forever. You're angry at an event in the moment, and for a few moments afterwards, maybe even a day. But if you're still angry months later, days later, it's just you keeping yourself angry at that point. The situation's over, and it's not helping anything. The only effect those emotions are having is making your day less joyful than it could be by making yourself sick. If you're like me and you have an anxiety disorder, that sort of thinking can really trigger things and make you have a very bad day, week, month, whatever. It can bring about panic attacks. It can make you physically ill. What if we let something go? Letting go of an emotion that no longer serves you does not mean it wasn't valid, and it does not mean that it was all in your head, which, literally it is, but I don't like those connotations at all. It doesn't mean that you were wrong. There's no right or wrong in feeling anything. There are feelings. It just means that it no longer serves you right now. The saber-toothed tiger we were running from is no longer in the building. The enemy clan that was coming to fight our village is no longer around, and we are safe. We're here. We see these beautiful artwork. Look at that. It's a sea dragon. I've seen those in aquariums in real life, and they are the most stunning creature I think I've ever seen. They're amazing. Something magical and prehistorical at the same time. It'd be a neat picture, wouldn't it? Open up a book like this and look through it. It's pretty hard to stay upset or angry or in fear when you're looking at images like this beautiful crystal kingdom that we can just lose ourselves in. This book brings me so much peace to look through it. It's a fantasy land where nothing bad happens. It's all good. It's all beautiful. And I think even if I wasn't attracted to coloring any of these, which is not true, I actually am attracted to coloring quite a few, especially this disco ball. I don't know how to do it yet, but I want to learn how to color this. But even if I didn't want to color any of these, I still would have purchased this book just to look through it, because it brings me peace, because it distracts me from worries in my head. I've always said that for mental health issues, medication and meditation, they are wonderful things and wonderful tools. But they're not the only tools. Coloring, for many of us, is a great tool. It's a great meditation, and it's a medication. And it's why we do it. When you color a picture like this, look at that. Fragments of glass reflecting things in different ways. I mean, it would take a long time to do this picture justice, and every single moment I spent coloring this picture was not spent in fear or anger, hatred, delusion. Look at that. I think this one's really cool. I don't know what story this is telling, but I love this. His crystal horns. Pull out any book that brings you joy to look at. These books, these hundreds of books, some of us have hundreds of books, sit on our shelves and don't get touched enough. They don't have to just be colored. Just open them up and lose yourself in them. It's what we would do with a good novel. Just lose yourself in these pictures. Imagine them colored. Imagine the stories that they tell. Imagine what the illustrator was thinking when they created something like this. Music and crystals and butterflies. It's just beautiful beauty. There's no tragedy in this. So lose yourself in a book. Lose yourself in a lion with a moon. This is stunning, and you don't have to color it. Don't be pressured to color it. Just look at it. Try not to look at your books as disappointments in yourself, in projects you never finished and promises you made and never kept. That's not what they are. They're here, they're waiting for us, they're ready for us when we are ready to color in them, but when we're not, we can also just look at them because they are stunning works of art. They are imaginations from someone we will probably never meet, but we get to know a little bit of how they think by looking at these beautiful pictures. And they do something for us. They calm us. They revive us. They give us some comfort. So, I hope that you are feeling some peace. Understand you are safe and you are loved. Take care. I'll see you in the next one.